President Muhammadu Buhari met with security chiefs at the presidential villa in Abuja on Thursday to review recent developments in the country concerning security and chart a way forward. Let's have details in this report.
There has been no doubt some encouraging developments over the past 3 weeks, during which security forces stepped up the battle against insurgency. While it has resulted in more Boko Haram insurgents giving up their arms and surrendering, Nigeria is not out of the woods yet. The mass surrender of insurgents has been met with mixed reactions. While some experts think it is a sign the insurgency may be at an end, others warn that this be viewed with caution.
The firepower of the troops, of the Nigerian troops, are such overwhelming to them that they no longer have freedom of space to operate. They don't have respite. They don't have sanctuaries. So they have no option than to surrender their arms, renounce the membership of the evil association, and then come to terms with the expectations of normal human beings to say, I'm no longer interested in shedding blood.
Just welcome them with open hands. You don't know their motives. We need to be sure that they're coming out genuinely in search of peace, in search of restitution, not that they're up to something else.
On the other hand, acts of banditry did not let up within this 3-week space, with Katsina, Kaduna, Niger, Zamfara and Plateau states becoming flashpoints. The most recent being the attack on Irigwe communities in Plateau State, the abduction of the Commissioner for Information in Niger State, and the attacks on Zangon Kataf communities in southern Kaduna. Attacks on travelers in the Rukuba Road community in Jos North, which has resulted in reprisal attacks and declaration of a curfew in 3 local government councils, present a worrying scenario, as it suggests a lot still needs to be done by security agencies in protecting the people. These would have formed part of briefs given to the president at this Thursday security meeting, while plans to bring a decisive end to the challenges will be formulated.
We have to use everything at our disposal, all the elements of national power, including the population. The wider community needs to work with the security agencies to deal with these problems. Responses can't be fast. We can't act on stale intelligence. And that is why, as things are happening right from the grassroots level, going all the way up, the local government, the state governments, and then, of course, the federal government has its own part to play. People should not cover for those who they have identified as unscrupulous, undesirable people.
And we also assure Mr. President that we will put more efforts, more sacrifice to ensure that crime and criminality is brought to the barest minimum. With strategies, changing strategies, improving on our assets, intelligence asset, and other assets to make sure that we are above and ahead of crime and criminality.
The unraveling development in Afghanistan should also be of interest with the return of the Taliban to governance. Afghanistan under the Taliban had been a haven for all sorts of extremist groups, and there are those worried that extremist groups may find support from them with their return to power. But experts believe Nigeria need not be worried that these may impact on insecurity.
Every of the incursions have a counterforce against them. In our own area, probably it's possible. I mean, I consider the fact, but I also believe that it might not be easy for them in our country because we have a counterforce that is equal to the task.
In all, it is hoped that the security meeting will come up with strategies that will ensure citizens across the country can live in peace.
All right, that's the background to our discussion. I have with me security consultant Commodore Abimbola Ayuba joining me to make sense of the outcome of that meeting and other security issues. Commodore, nice to have you join me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And good to have you in our studio in Lagos.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Good to be here.
Now, in the military circle, when the commander-in-chief is saying, you guys need to brace up, I don't want to leave the office as a failure, and I need to warn all of you, if I don't get results, changing you guys, I wouldn't hesitate to do that. When words like that come from the commander-in-chief, what does it mean in military circle?
It means robust, emphatic declaration that it should no longer be business as usual. But you will recall that following the change of service chief, and I was privileged to be here on this show, I did say congratulations Nigeria, because we see a systemic change, a generational shift, and we can see progressively after the heavy consultations of the services chiefs with their constituencies, they've come up with strategy that appears now to be working. And of course, this has resulted in some of the manifestations we are beginning to see, where so-called fighters, insurgents, or terrorists, depending on what paradigm we choose to adopt, are now coming out from the bushes, the jungles, and their hideouts, declaring that they are repentant, you know. So the efforts of the service chief is beginning to show. However, in what I deduce from the CNC's statement and directive to his commanders is that do more, push harder, and let's end this so-called terrorist domain and then restore Nigeria back.
It is obvious, yeah, like you said, it is obvious we're seeing some change in the fight against Boko Haram terrorists as we know them. However, when it comes to banditry and kidnapping and all of that in the northwest, we're not necessarily seeing that. You know, there's still pockets of, you know, things here and there happening on a daily basis. So if we put them on the platter, how do we reconcile the effectiveness of that thing you're saying, that the military, you know, we're seeing that change right now, we're seeing some seeming improvement?
You see, what we are dealing with, especially in the northeast and which has fanned out to the northwest, is a domain of terror. We are dealing with the haven of terrorists whose ideology is clear. And you know, it's like that's the bigger threat. Degrading, defeating those key terrorist groups, BH and ISWAP, are the main priorities. But underlying ideological terrorism are criminal activities, which they do to fund and recruit members for further assignments,
whatever they call
it. What those level of kidnapping, the upsurge we are witnessing right now, is to fund the activities of the larger group. But now that the larger group, especially with the decapitation of the Shekau,
yes,
and by extension the leadership of BH and the interim mergers, which to me seem to have collapsed right now, because you know that's why you see most of the elements coming out to surrender are actually from the Boko Haram stock.
For faction, as the case may be.
As the case may
right.
be, yes.
So that has to do with people who don't necessarily want to be absorbed or assimilated into the other faction. So they have to. So that draws the attention to, or the searchlight to the issue of this so-called repentance. Is it genuine? I was speaking to a set of journalists earlier on who used the word hunger. That there's hunger within that camp. So instead of staying there to die, let's just tell them we're repentant, and then we can become freer again.
Yes, that speaks to the effectiveness of the military kinetic operation right now and the change of strategy, because it's virtually they are encircled, They are unable to resupply their logistics. They are suffering. They are hungry. They have families in those jungles. Their children are falling sick. So the will to fight is already diminished, and that's why they are coming out to surrender. However, I suggest that we approach the matter with cautious optimism, because, of course, in the environment of insecurity, terrorism, you have different tactics might be brought out to, for instance, they can say, let's bring out this number of people and say that, okay, we are surrendering, and let them infiltrate the society once again and get us more information and then come back
to see how we can relaunch.
Yeah, but from my own assessment, they are actually exhausted with fighting. However, they have to be processed carefully and professionally, and there are ways and means of doing that. We should not be in a hurry to declare that these people have repented. So what happens to all the crimes that they have committed while on the other side of the divide? What happens to the killings, people whose livelihoods have been taken out as a result of their own wicked actions? That has to be brought into the spotlight, and that begins to interrogate the need for the justice system to wade in after they have been duly profiled, and of course the level of involvement of each of them will be ascertained. But primarily, I think that the must first of all be made to go to prison, serve their time. It should be on the record that at a point in the history of Nigeria, this group of people, for whatever reasons they felt they went into that action, their names must be recorded in the book of criminals who fought against. Then within the correctional facilities, then they can bring in people who are experts in reformation. All this idea of de-radicalization.
Exactly.
It's not something that should be done by the uninitiated. It's a domain of expertise. For instance, child protection agents are experts in their own field. You cannot also now have parties to the conflict being involved directly
in the de-radicalization process.
It's to my mind, it's wrong and it's illegal, and the issue of disarmament, demobilization, rehabilitation, resettlement, reconstruction, the arrows into its infinity.
Even in all of that de-radicalization, reintegration, everything for the repentant Boko Haram members, let's shift attention to the victims of that, killings and all of that, the activity of the terrorists and all of that. There hasn't been so much emphasis on the issue of, rehabilitation, the issue of counseling and all of that. How much of that should we be looking at? Because the efforts that we have recorded so far comes from international organizations when they come to help, and so on. But as our own people.
Mike, it's important that we now shift focus on the impact of insecurity and violence on the victims. Otherwise, we can identify within that framework ready-made future sources of conflict. Because if you try to de-radicalize and as it's been done right now, and then you quickly railroad these guys into the society, and with big jumbo packages, and they go back to their communities. Those who they have deprived of their livelihood, those who have been widowed due to their actions, will never, ever be happy. And practically, if you take Borno, for example, in its microcosm from out of the northeast region, or zone as it is, if you interview any Borno citizen, for instance, I can easily tell you for free that over 80% of Borno citizens don't accept the present way in which especially the safe corridor thing is being handled, and they feel that there is need for a truth and reconciliation kind of committee strategy,
like was done in Rwanda
and in South Africa and in other climes, where people will truly be brought out and face each other and
seek forgiveness from the person you have wronged, one way or the other. If he decides to forgive you, so be it.
I have seen situations where a fighter returned to the community and the mother burst into tears that she's surprised that the son has not been killed in the other side of the divide, because she keeps remembering the day he took up arms and killed almost all members of her family, for instance. So that being there, the traditional rulers have to be deeply involved in the processes, because they know, and I'm happy that in the statement of the National Security Advisor, as part of outcomes of the meeting, he mentioned the application of community intelligence, because that's the way we should be going. Because
that's military-civilian engagement.
Yes, because the community is the receptacle for most of what is going on, and of course they know the actors. They know the actors, and sometimes the military successes will also depend on intelligence given by these locals. And when they do, they need to be protected. Of course, you can see what's going on the other side of the globe in Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan. In fact, as we wrap up, I was going to ask you that generally. Some people have said that the makeup of Afghanistan and Nigeria is kind of different, where you can't copy something from a country like that, paste in Nigeria, and it works the same way. There are some things also that will happen here that cannot happen in Afghanistan, as the case. People have analyzed that in security terms. But what lessons do we have to learn from that? Because when it comes to the list of terrorized countries, Afghanistan comes first, and then Nigeria. What do you make of that?
Well, it also gives us a warning signal on our dependence on foreign powers and foreign support. On one hand, that there's need to build national consensus, and that you can only do in an environment of peace, equity, knowing that the government deliberately has set up an economic sustainability plan that was geared towards raising the economy. And without peace and security, the economy will surely be heading south.
All right, we have to leave it here. I wish we had lots of time to discuss this more, but this is quite interesting. And thank you so much for your insight, security consultant, Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, retired. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much, Mike, for having me.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Right.